So today I'm going to show how I put together my penny alcohol stove, a variation on a couple different designs. One of the best out there I would say is Mark Journeys. I'll post a link in the sidebar. Now, as far as the stove goes, here it is. Very light, very simple, very efficient. That's why people love it so much, and of course it's very cheap. Here's what you're going to need to put it together. You're going to need 2 pop cans. You're going to need a blade of some kind, might be better razor blade, X-Acto blade. This is what I have here. I'm in South America right now. And I like using the hacksaw. It's a bit easier, it's a bit more accurate with the rims. As well as that, you're going to need a set of pliers. You're going to need a push pin, and you're going to need a penny. A ruler is useful. You can guess, but if you want to get something a bit nicer to show your friends, well then hey, better to take the time and do it right. So this is what you're going to need, and we're just going to walk through the steps. This is your inside can that's going to have the jets in it. You're going to want to mark 1.5 centimeters or 5/8 of an inch, more or less, from the bottom. And this is going to serve as your line for cutting. Now, as you can see, I've taken this blade and I've clamped it to the table. You don't need to do this. I just find it's one less thing to worry about. You don't end up cutting your finger open. So I've set this to the height of the rim at 1.5 centimeters, about 5/8 of an inch for people in America. And what you're going to do is just press lightly on this can against the blade. You're not going to cut it. You're just going to mark a mark all the way around, which you're going to use later with your hacksaw. Now that you've cut your line, it's going to be your guide. You're going to take your hacksaw and you're going to lightly run it back and forth. Again, not all the way through, just to weaken up the metal, make it thinner, and keep rotating the can and using it as a guide, that line. You keep spinning it as you saw. You're not going to come off that line very much. Now you'll take your knife and you'll take that weak spot and you just put a bit of pressure on it and gently work your way around. Of course, kids, if you don't have your own knives, make sure you talk to your mom. She's not going to be very happy if they're not going to work for making dinner tonight. So there you have it, the piece that you're going to be used for the inside of your jets. Now let's move on to doing the same thing with the outside can. Your second can needs a mark now at 2.5 centimeters, and this is going to allow enough space that when you put the cans together there'll be a little rim that you're going to need for priming it. I've finished the other can, the other stove. The edge is a bit rough. I'll sand it down a bit later, but we're going to put this outside piece to one side and we're going to work on the jets and what's going to be the allow the flames to come out of this stove. This stove is going to have 6 jets and 3 holes in the middle that are going to act as a pressure relief and pressure maintenance. So you're going to take a spot on the side. Now you're going to put the jets on the outside, and that's going to spread the flames out when you light the stove and when you're using the stove. And I usually use this little rim around here, the secondary rim on the can. So just press in there, poke a hole there, and there you have it. Now spin it to the other side, do the same, and then measure. You can do it carefully if you want, about 1/3 of the way around the side, and then again between that. You got 4 of your jets already done, and then you can just work on the other 2. Alright, so there you have it. The next thing you're going to want to do is put 3 holes in the middle in the shape of a triangle. You're going to want to put them close enough together that a penny is going to cover them. Now, unfortunately, a lot of cans these days, you probably won't be able to see it, have a little number stamped in the bottom, and that makes it a lot harder to get a good seal with your penny. If you can find a can that doesn't have those numbers written on them or stamped into them, and if you can't, well then just use a bit of pressure and push it in there so it gets a good seal. So there you have your jets on your stove. Now, just to make it spread the flames a bit more, if you put your pin in there and then lever it out, it's going to change the angle which the flames come out. For the holes in the side wall, you're just going to want to make them halfway between this bottom rim and the top rim, and start by placing them between the jets and then work your way around. So I've put 12 holes in this side wall. The next thing you're going to want to do is pick up your needle nose pliers, and you're going to put them over top of this hole, only as high as the hole, or maybe just a millimeter higher, and you're going to bend it in. You're going to do that all the way around, and as you can see, it's going to make a crinkled wall with more surface area to heat up the fuel and allow it to burn better. So here you have the completed work right there. It's a bit dirty inside, and you're going to want to put these two together now. Of course, they're the same diameter, so that's going to be a bit difficult. So there's a little trick that you can use. If you take the inside piece and stick it in your freezer for half an hour, and then when it's well cold and the metal's shrunk down a bit, you can take this other piece and heat it up, and then slide them together, and they'll make it much easier to put them together. So let's try that. So here you have the stove, and you can't see right from the side the top of the stove, and that's what you want. You're going to need to put some fuel in there to prime it, so you don't want it overflowing. Now with these 3 holes in the middle, when you push the stove down, you have to leave a little bit of space for the fuel to drain in. It's really easy to push it down and have these 3 holes touching right on the bottom of this can, and you're not going to be able to fill your stove with fuel if that's the case. What you need for fuel for this alcohol stove is alcohol. The most recommended thing is camp alcohol, camp stove fuel. It's methyl alcohol. Some people have used a variation of gasoline antifreeze. What you want to make sure of is you get the highest alcohol level you can. So something from the paint thinner section of your local hardware store is going to have methyl alcohol or methylated spirits, one of the two. All I have right here is 75% alcohol, and this is white alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, and it's not going to burn as cleanly or as hot. To prime the stove, or to fill it up, you're going to take this fuel and you're going to fill up this little inside ring and then wait for it to go down. If you want to be really accurate, you can put your penny in, and that'll create a seal and allow you to fill it up, and then you can just move the penny out of the way and let it drain in. Alright, and you're going to have to measure this out to find exactly how much fuel it takes to boil however much water you're going to boil on your hiking trip. When you're all done, you put the penny in, and then this is a bit more difficult. You fill up the outside rim so that it covers the jet. The stove is primed with fuel and the penny is inside. We'll explain the penny as it starts to heat up. So that's on fire now, and you probably won't even see that, except you'll notice a bit of bubbling. What's going to happen as this gets hotter is the stove is going to heat up, and that heating up is actually going to start to boil the fuel inside. And when the fuel boils inside, the gas is going to come out through these 6 vents. When that happens, you're going to see the typical jets of a stove. Until then, you're just going to see a slow burning, kind of like a chafing dish for a restaurant. So what's the penny for? It's there to control the pressure. Once you start the stove, you're going to want as much pressure as possible. You want the stove to heat up and the fuel to boil. But once it boils and the jets start coming up the side, you don't want them to get too high. You want them to stay fairly even. when the pressure builds up, it's actually going to lift up the penny, and you might hear a little rattling noise, and that's good. It's letting out excess gas. It's going to maintain those jets at an even level throughout the burn, all the way to the end. In fact, you'll notice maybe in the last 30 seconds or so before the fuel runs out, the jets will go from being very high to nothing, and it's really nice that way. It's not like some of the more expensive stoves that you have to keep pumping and priming and maintaining the pressure. It does all that for you, and you don't have to touch it. You don't have to get in the way. This stove has been burning for over 6 minutes now, and